In this section of this course, we are going to learn how we can use NGRX effect for performing CRUD operation. And here we are going to perform CRUD operation by storing data in a database as well as retrieving data from the database. Now for the database, again, we are going to use Firebase solution. So as I have mentioned before, Firebase is a complete backend solution. If I go to Firebase, just like how we can create users in Firebase and authenticate them, in the same way, we can also create databases in Firebase. For that, let's go to build. Let's expand this build. And there, if I scroll down, we have two options. We have Firestore database and we have real-time database. In this course, I'm going to use this real-time database. So I will select this. And now we need to create a database. For that, we can click on this create database button. And here we need to select a database location. So in the drop down, you can select the nearest location. Here I'm going to keep this default value selected, which is United States, and I'll click on next. Now here you have two options. You can either create this database in logged mode. This is recommended for production, but in our case, I'm going to select test mode. Okay, and here we can see the rules for performing read and write operation. So basically, if this expression returns true, in that case, anyone can perform read or write operation on our database. But if it returns false, in that case, no one can read or write into this database. We are going to change this rule in a bit, but here, let me go ahead and let me click on this enable. And now our database is created, and this is the URL which we need to use in order to create collection in this database and store data in this database. So this is the database URL. Using this database URL, we can create our own collections, as well as we can read data from those collections and write data into those collections. And we will see that in a bit. But just understand that here the database is created, and in this database we are going to create some collections like courses and other collections if required. Another thing which I'm going to do is I'm also going to enable the Firebase storage. So here we also have this storage option. This storage we are going to use to upload images. So for example, whenever we are going to create a course, for that course, we are going to select an image, and that image we will store in this Firebase storage. Okay, and then we will get the URL of the stored image and we will use it in our application. So again, in order to enable the Firebase storage, let's click on this Get Started button. And here we need to select a location. So I'll keep this default one selected, and I'll simply click on this Continue button. And here also you can see we have two modes, production mode and test mode. Again, for this application, I'm going to select the test mode. All right. And here also you can see the rules, basically who is allowed to perform read and write operation on the storage. Again, we are going to change it in a bit. Let's simply click on this create button. All right. So here you can see currently we do not have any file stored here. But if we want, we can upload files here by clicking on this upload file button. But in our case, we are going to upload the files from our Angular application. Now here I'm going to change the rules. Currently what I want is all the users should be able to upload files to this storage. Later, we will also change this rule to only allow the logged in user to be able to upload images. But for now, here I am simply going to remove this line and I am going to set it to true. And when I set it to true, that means anyone can read and write into this storage. Let me click on this publish. Okay, so the rule is published. Let's go to Files tab. And I'm going to do the same thing for the real-time database. So currently in our database also, I want to allow the read and write permission for all the users, even if the user is not authenticated. So for that, again, we can go to this Rules tab. And there, I'm going to set this read and write to true. So I can simply say true here as well as here. And let's click on this publish button. Okay, here we need to have a comma. Okay, now here it says your security rule are defined as public, so anyone can steal, modify or delete data in your database. But later we are going to change this rule and we will make sure that only an authenticated user should be able to modify the data in our database. Let's go to this data tab here. Now the next thing which we are going to do is we are going to register a web app. So for that we can go to project settings, and there let's scroll down, and here we are going to register our project. So here we have different options, like we can register an iOS app or an Android app or a web application. So here I'm going to select this option. Let's provide a name here. So here I'm going to call it as Angular-NGRX. Okay, you can provide any name here. It's not required that this name should be exactly matching your project name. You can provide any name here. Now you just need to click on this register app. Here you also have this option to set up Firebase hosting for this app, but I'm not going to do that. I'll simply click on register app. So the app is registered. Now what we need to do is we need to add this configuration in our Angular application in order to use Firebase Storage. Before that, we also need to install some SDKs in our Angular application. For that, let's go to VS Code. Here, let's open VS Code built-in terminal. And here, we are going to install at Angular slash fire package. If I press enter, so here we have an error. So what we will try to is, we will try to run the same command, but with version 16. And now let's press enter. All right, so AngularFire package has been installed. Let's quickly check that by going to package.json file. And in there, we should also have AngularFire. Here you can see AngularFire version 16 has been installed. Now the next thing which we need to do is, in order to work with AngularFire, we also need to import it in our main module. So let's go to AppModule.ts file. And here I'm going to add import statement. And what do we want to import? We want to import AngularFire module from at Angular slash fire slash compat. Then in the same way, let me copy this. Let's paste it here. And here we are also going to import AngularFire storage module from at Angular slash fire slash compat slash storage. All right. Now let's go to imports array. And here let me close this terminal for now. So again here first we are going to import Angular Fire module. Okay, and we are going to import Angular Fire storage module. All right. Now on this Angular Fire module we also need to initialize it. So for that, on this we are going to use initialize app method. Now to this initialize app method we need to pass the configuration for our Firebase. So what I'm going to do is, inside this source folder, I'm going to create a new folder. I'll call it as environments. And inside this environments folder, we are going to create an environment file. So I'm going to call it as environment.ts. So this environment.ts file, it is going to store all the environment variables for the development. So here we are going to export an object. I'm going to call it as environments. All right. And in this environments object, let's go back to Firebase. And from there, I'm going to copy these settings. Okay. Let's go back. And here I'm going to paste it. And here instead of equal to, we are going to use colon. Okay, let me format this document. All right, so in this environments object, we have a property called Firebase config, and in that Firebase config, we have all the configuration related to Firebase. Here, I'm also going to create another property called mode, and I'm going to set it to development. All right, let's save the changes. Now here, if you will see in this Firebase config, we also have the API key of our project. So now what I can do is, we had created this constant.ts file in the app folder. So first of all, let's pass that configuration to this initialize app. So for that, we are going to first export and use this environments object. In there, we have a property called Firebase config. So that config we are going to pass here. Let's save the changes, and then let's go to constant.ts. From there, I'm going to remove this constant. Now we are using this constant in our auth module. So if I go to auth service, there we have this login method where we are using that constant Firebase API key. So now this Firebase API key is no more present. I can remove this from here. And now instead of that, what we can do is here again we can use environment, and for that we will have to import it first. In there we have Firebase config object, and inside that we have API key. So we are going to use that. Same I'm going to pass in case of sign up. So from there also we are going to remove this Firebase API key, and we are going to read the API key from the Firebase config. Let's save the changes. Let's quickly check if we have any error. We do not have any error, and the application is compiled successfully. So in this lecture, we have done all the configurations which we need to do in order to work with Firebase Realtime database as well as Firebase Storage. In the next lecture, what we are going to do is, so in our Angular application, if I go to courses, and there I can create new courses by clicking on this create course button. So it is going to open a form. Now here, along with the title, description, author and price, now we are also going to select an image, and that selected image we will save in the Firebase storage. Let's see how we can do that in our next lecture. This is all from this lecture. If you have any questions from this lecture, then feel free to ask it. Thank you for listening and have a great day.